closure. We can say to the state, okay, we're good now. We've got a closure plan. We've got it all fully funded. Give us an approval. And then we will be good. And then as Ken, I think, pointed out, or Doug pointed out, then the money that we're cycling from the budget into that closure fund, which is $100,000+ a year, can then be used for other purposes within the facility.
Or even to reduce our assessments.
Or even to reduce assessments.
Okay, well, I think I have a sense of the board, and I'll talk with Owen too before the next meeting and take this to them and see what their feelings are. Thank you. Let's see, next item on the agenda is discussion of the consent agenda. And I'm going to ask Deb to lead this part of the discussion. We have information that I thought was actually pretty useful in our packet. So Deb, you want to
Sure.
give some thought to how we might move things around a little?
Sure. Yeah, I think that we've all had some comments and here and there about trying to make the meetings more efficient. And, one of the things is Doug discussed is not having Rick read the report and just ask questions as we did tonight. But another thing that actually Doug raised to me about whether or not I'd had experience with the consent agenda, and I have in other boards, and it's really worked quite well. And I think that it's something that we really should seriously consider. For example, as it says here, but, in Rick's notes, but for example, I looked at the agenda and said, oh my gosh, we could have moved so many items, the donations to the town. There's no reason that you have to, individually accept gifts, for example. The resignations, you're not going to not accept somebody's resignation. So it works with respect to routine matters as well as with respect to non-controversial matters. And I could have provided a whole bunch of links for you, and I'm sure that you wouldn't have wanted to read, but I thought this one was particularly good. It talks about, how it works, and in particular that the chair decides which items that he thinks should go on the consent agenda. If somebody wants to take something off of the consent agenda, or if they want to discuss it, then obviously that's up to the board to do. But I think it would be a useful tool in streamlining our meetings.
To make it work, if we follow the rules as defined, it will work. Doug as chair would be the person that would select the items that would go on the consent agenda. They are usually the non-controversial ones, as noted in the guidelines. What's really important, though, is that the materials that are on the consent agenda, just as any other materials that the select board gets, are presented to us well in advance of our meeting.
And that we review them.
And that we
Right.
have time to review them. And, a week would be a good target for getting materials prior to the board. That will allow us time to make sure we're all, we've had time to review the material, we've had time to think about it, ask any questions. There's always the opportunity in the process to pull any item off the agenda and put it on as a separate agenda at the meeting, so that covers much.
You will often see places that use this, they'll make a motion to remove an item from the consent agenda. There might be, one board member might have one thing, another board member might have another thing that they want to remove for discussion, and then they get discussed as separate items.
Yeah, and probably, it's up to you, up to the chair and the town manager, but I would think that, like, up front where you say, are there any changes to the agenda? Boom, that would be an appropriate place to consider.
Personally, I think, and I think we've had at the last meeting, for instance, it was an hour and 45 minutes, and we had a great deal of conversation about different things. And tonight, we're going up on 2 hours. Is that too long? To talk about town business? There are some things that we don't know that would be controversial, and if they're lumped into something, then, we'd have to pull them out if one of the five of us thought it to be. So, I mean, you know, I'm not against talking about things individually, and if we had, you know, a 3-hour meeting or a 4-hour meeting that we knew that was coming, sure, do it. But, you know, if we're only looking at 2-hour meetings, I don't have a problem talking about town business.
So, are you, just one second, are you for exploring the idea of a consent agenda or not?
Not particularly.
Okay. Ken, you're the traditionalist.
Yeah, I have concerns, and some of them have to do with the fact that because as a governmental body, it's a little different than, for example, in an organization. You know, I could see this being used where there's an executive board that can talk about things and maybe have some conversation about what goes on a consent agenda, but we can't do that. We can't have those conversations out of public view. So that leaves it all on the shoulders of the chair to decide what goes on there.
No, I like that.
There's a few things in here that, well, one thing in particular that says it's not a vote required. There absolutely is a vote required by our charter. We have to vote on everything. And so I'd be concerned about that. And to look at this evening's agenda, I mean, yes, we had to accept a few gifts, but it gave us the opportunity, it didn't take very long, it gave us the opportunity to say thank you to those people individually, I think. And so I think that that's fine. I mean, you know, when we have a big slate of committee renewals to put on, that, that works. But we had some we had to discuss, so I guess I'm not sure how many things could go on there. Certainly minutes could go there, I guess. But for me, I would have a pretty low threshold of taking things off the consent agenda, and I wouldn't do it to be a pain in the neck. That's not why I'm here.
I would.
Well,
You would.
but, so I guess I have some concerns with it. The other concern I have is on the public comment aspect of things. How would we deal with something that was on the consent agenda that somebody, a public comment, got up and says, I have a public comment on this? You know, or do we allow that, or you know, we would have to figure that out. And I think it's probably worth asking town council if this would work and how it would comport with our charter and things of that nature.
Sorry, could I respond to a couple of those things?
Sure.
So legislatures use consent agendas all the time. Municipalities use consent agendas. This is not something that's just used in the private world. So this is not an unusual thing for a public body to do, number one. Obviously, it needs a vote, and regardless of what this says, I didn't think that that's what this says. What I
somewhere in
thought
here that a
this
vote
says,
wasn't
you
needed.
group them together. You don't do individual votes. You group them together as approving the things on the consent
Well,
agenda.
it says right here, it's not necessary to take a vote on consent agenda items.
Okay, but maybe it's just not written well, but you do take a vote typically on
To
consent
pass the
agenda items
consent.
in the aggregate. So you respond to the town charter in that way because you are taking a vote. Town charter doesn't say that you have to individually vote on everything, as I recall. And with respect to the public, sure, if there's something on there, just like, Doug asked for, comments from the public at the beginning of the meeting or near the beginning of the meeting. If there's something, he says something that's not on the agenda, or if you have something on the consent agenda that you want to comment on, go for it. So, I mean, I think those things are addressed, and as I said, they're used by public bodies.
And the other thing
Frequently.
that I had thought of in reading through this was, there was an idea about, asking questions and clarifying questions about consent agenda items. And I would just be concerned that that might slide down a slippery slope into a discussion outside of the meeting.
Yeah, I just had somebody message me that's watching that was basically saying, keep the public's business public, because it starts to be a slippery slope.
That's my concern with it myself. I mean, I'll leave my comment there.
I didn't view it as, not keeping the people's business public. I think this is all public. It was just trying to streamline the business.
Yeah, again, you're talking about, appointments, if there's no controversy with respect to the appointments, you're talking about resignations. accepting donations. And there's nothing that says that when you vote on the consent agenda, you can't say, and by the way, I'd like to make the comment that let's make sure that we, publicly thank everybody, et cetera, et cetera. That doesn't stop you from making that comment.
I guess I wonder if the things are non-controversial, and we can move through them pretty quickly anyway, so I guess I'm,
And how do we exactly know that they're non-controversial? Some of them that might be clumped in.
Well, you find out when, again, the chair determines that he doesn't think that they're controversial. He doesn't do it in any private, secret discussions. He prepares the agenda, and he determines that he doesn't think that they're controversial. And if he turns out that he's incorrect, then he finds that out when we take those items off the consent agenda.
I mean, from a functional standpoint, really all that this does is it lumps multiple motions into one motion. When you present a consent agenda list, you can present, the following 4 items are up for motion, and they are boom, 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 boom.
Well, what I would suggest then, in the interest of time, why don't, obviously the board is split on this, so why don't I do a little bit of work with Rick, we'll talk about it again next month, and, we'll work through it as a board until we either, decide not to do it or to do it, so.
one of the things, is sort of on the same topic, but not really, and perhaps, Rick, you could check with council on this, because we had the question last year, when we come to the spring, when we're putting the articles on the warrant, and we've always been under the impression that we have to read them all, every word of them out loud, and Linda, I think we had some question about that. Perhaps now is the time when we can ask that question to see,
Yeah.
because, I mean, that's
think
the only
that's-
thing I think you do have to do that in one way, shape, or form, but is there a way to streamline that procedure at all? Because that's the one most time-consuming thing that this board does, is that meeting where we have to read the entire town meeting warrant.
But I don't understand why you have to do that, and I would ask the town council about that, because, I mean, again, putting on my lawyer hat, I can't imagine
There may
a
be a statute-
requirement
there may be a
that requires.
statutory requirement.
Yeah, I hear
don't
what you're
think
saying,
there
but I
is.
doubt it. I
Can
doubt
we
that.
add that to the manager's report next month?
Yeah, I'll do
Okay.
that.
Because now is the time to look into that.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
the question came up about it in March, it's like, we don't have time, we've got to get these things
Yeah,
passed.
yeah,
so
I
now's the
underst-
time.
I
And this,
understand.
if anything else, this consent agenda
Right.
jogged me to ask that question. So-
Right.
So it was worthwhile bringing it up just for
There
that.
we go.
When you do that, Rick, see if anybody else locally does that
What,
as
which?
a consent agenda.
No, he's talking about the, reading the,
The
oh, you
warrant
mean ask
articles.
the lawyer if they have it?
No, in his report.
Yeah, I
back
can
to us.
find out.
Just find out whether any of the other, I mean, not that it makes any difference, we could be the first, but
I know, it seems to me I've gone to Rockland, I believe they have a consent agenda. I don't think Camden uses one, but
Okay.
Rockland does.
Well, we'll get more information and talk about, we're obviously not gonna do it tonight. So we do need to talk a little bit about the vehicle use policy. This is just in your packet for information and an opportunity to ask questions of Rick, and things you'd like to see added or deleted.
Are we going to, I thought there had been some discussion of lumping that in with the internal controls policy workshop. Are we going to workshop this on that same day?
Yeah, that's up to you.
Because I think it does need some workshopping.
I
That-
do, but I
that-
think we might be able to get, Rick,
Pointed
a
in
few
the right
minutes of
direction.
feedback to
Right,
get
yeah,
in the right direction.
if there's anything that jumps out at you that's, non-punctuation spelling, if there's stuff that you think we need to put in there.
One
I'd
thing
like-
that I thought was missing is there didn't seem to be any,
Hold
anything
on, let
about,
me get to my thing so I can jot
Yeah.
myself some notes. Okay, go ahead.
anything about storage of vehicles after hours.
Oh, I saw it.
Yeah,
yeah, that's in there.
Right here.
Yeah, I did add that in.
9. Vehicles shall be locked in garage or parked on town property at the end. Whenever possible, vehicles shall be stored inside if space allows.
Which section is that?
That's a-
Section 10, I
Lock.
guess. I'm assuming it's
The
section
end,
10,
I
since it's
think.
right above section
Yeah,
11.
9, yeah.
Oh, it's a section, oh, there is no section 10.
Section 10, section 10, number 9.
I had a couple of things while we're
And
looking.
garaged, okay. Yep, sorry.
One of the things I was gonna ask is I didn't notice anything on idling.
Oh, okay,
And the second one, is there
yep. good.
anything or any concern that we should have with regard to any IRS mileage
Yep, good
issues
question,
when
yep.
they're not actually coming or going from?
Yep.
I mean,
I'm
when
not
you-
going to answer these questions
Right.
tonight.
Okay.
You just,
It's my belief that when you're coming to work, you're not, that's private time
Yeah,
versus
commuting
being.
mileage is not allowable as a deduction.
So that's what I'm asking, is whether, how do we address that, or do we, or?
yep,
And then the other thing that I noticed in reading it, there's a section in there about the use of alcohol or unauthorized drugs, but I didn't see anything about prescription drugs. You know, prescription that an employee has that's been prescribed by his
Yep.
doctor is perfectly legal, but may still impair their ability to operate a vehicle. I think there should be something in there about that.
good, okay, thank you.
Okay, Rick, another one, if I could.
Yep.
Everywhere it mentions the town manager or his or her designee, I offer this as a town policy and should be owned by the town manager and solely the responsibility of the town manager.
You mean getting rid of the his or her?
Getting rid of the his or her designee portion.
Okay,
The only part about that would be, and I'd have to look at the thing closely or not, but sometimes if the town manager's unavailable for a period of time and a decision or something needs to be made, there'd have to be somebody who could take care of
Or the
that.
town manager's designee or whatever.
But that-
You're just trying to avoid the his or her stuff.
oh, no.
Well,
the
what I'm trying to
designee.
avoid
Yep.
is the delegating the responsibility of managing to the policy to someone other than the town manager.
Right, in general.
In
Yep.
general.
Yep,
If it says, or his or her designee in the town manager's absence,
Right.
it would work.
Yep.
But I think that's overkill, because there are things, when you are gone, you designate responsibilities during your absence anyway. should
yeah,
be
and
formally-
it's rare that when I'm gone or on vacation that I'm not reachable.
Okay, so anyways, that's,
Yep,
I'm of the opinion that any safety policy and HR policy is solely the responsibility of the person in charge.
Under, there was one where we had a replication of seatbelt usage. I mean,
Yep.
I forget, I was trying to find it there now, but under number 7, use of town vehicles, number 2, this is sort of like overkill. You've got assigned vehicles are assigned to whom a vehicle is assigned.
Yeah, I stayed away, there's a lot of gruesome grammar in
Yeah,
this.
well, yeah.
I stayed away from that.
yeah, just send me the gruesome grammar stuff separately, but you're giving me good
Okay.
feedback on the other pieces.
There are also places where the point is made, there are duplicate
Yeah.
places where you point out use of seatbelts is required, that kind of stuff. I would go through and just make sure that some point is only stated once.
Okay,
So we'll have a final shot at this at our
well, you'll have another shot.
work. Yeah.
I'm not expecting a final shot, I'm expecting another shot. But good, thank you, it's all really good, good feedback, and we'll work on all these. I've got idling, IRS questions, use of prescription drugs, town manager, get rid of the designee, and look for duplication of seatbelts. And if you see terrible grammar, spelling, punctuation,
Ton of it.
yeah, just send it in.
Send it.
No, but I'm also sympathetic to developing policies and procedures. When you look at the thing as many times as I'm sure people
Yeah,
have,
oh, yeah,
and then you start thinking through every possible scenario, because you've got 9 pages of procedure here, and if you think about it, a good procedure is about 2 sentences long. And so there's an awful lot of overkill.
yeah. The way this stuff gets developed is it starts with one thing, and then they add something else on, you add something else on, and over a period of years and iterations, it legislates common sense to, to the extreme. But thank you.
Well, we'll see it again at our internal controls workshop and discuss it some more there. At this time, I guess I need a motion to adjourn the select board so we can go into wastewater commissioner.
So
I
moved.
move to exit as select board and enter as wastewater commissioners.
Is there a second?
Yep.
All in favor? So be it. Next, we have a sewer abatement request, and I think this is going to be led by Megan and Rick.
Working our way up to the microphone.
At the end, the question for us is going to be whether or not to grant an abatement that's being requested by a citizen.
You'll see a very well-done memo from Megan in here explaining, because frankly, when she and I first started talking about this, I was on the side of the person requesting the abatement until I got all of the details about what has transpired over the period of years and how we got to this point. But basically, has everyone had a chance to read through the letter?
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't need to repeat it. It's a very well-done memo and with backup information.
Rick, one question I had was, I didn't see in here whether there was positive confirmation as to whether this residence was tied to the sewer or not tied to the sewer.
The closest we have is, the closest confirmation we did was a dye test at this point. We did a dye test from his system, and none of the dye showed up in our sewer system. Am I correct, Megan?
Yeah, and Scott had some current concerns about how the test was actually run. In the section from the code enforcement officer, it says if the house was dye tested, was there consideration that perhaps just the effluent was going to the sewer and not the solids? That would have slowed the dye down considerably.
Oh,
So I saw that part in the report as well. There are other ways to determine whether there's a connection or not a connection. I think that's one of the key parts of this whole thing.
everything we have says it's connected, but it's,
But
Paperwork.
yeah, the
But it's
yeah.
paperwork, but we haven't run a camera down the pipe and say, oh, we've got a elbow here,
Yeah, or a
or
plug.
T.
Yep.
And we haven't gone out with our super duper electronic devices and scanned the ground and seen pipe, metal, holes, and all the types of things that you can do with the right gear. I think that's a big part of the question here is connect or not connect.
Well, I was trying to find in here somewhere, Scott had recommended not to accept it, or not to do the abatement, but I'm having trouble finding that. My list of stuff here.
I
remember-
guess, and in the questions, I mean, do we know that they have a functioning septic system? I mean, I guess,
Scott knows that there is a septic system there. His concerns are the requirement when the ordinance was passed that houses that had sewer go by them were required to connect to the system at that time. He's also has concerns with the permits that were taken out to actually connect the house to the sewer system. So one would think if you're taking the permits out, you're actually connecting to the system. He does remember the pipe being uncovered for an actual connection. His other main concern was the pump that was installed at their house. Their septic system is downhill from the house, which would not require a pump to pump sewage. The sewer system is uphill, which would have required a pump. So for them to take out a permit and actually install a pump would lead one to believe that the house is actually connected to the sewer system.
But we don't know for a fact that they actually installed the pump, correct?
has anybody talked to George Hazelton? Because he shows up as the contractor on a lot of these permits.
I don't know if Scott did
Whether,
that.
you know,
And I reached out to the property owner today. Did you?
I've called him twice and I emailed him twice last
Well, the
week.
problem is, it seems from what I read, there's been a couple of different property owners over the
Yes.
whole saga here. So
And-
the current property owner just may not know.
And basically what happened is 2014, the homeowner, had concerns that he was being charged and should
current
not
homeowner.
have been, and Scott told him at that time that he either needed to uncover the septic system or have the property dye tested, which he did neither until last month.
So Meg, would you state for us clearly, what is the homeowner asking for in the abatement now?
The homeowner is asking us to abate all usage charges on the account.
Going how far back?
Well, I calculated it back to 2014. His assumption is that we would go back to 2007.
And what's the legal ability for us to abate that? Because I know with taxes, we can only abate a certain amount, is that correct?
That is correct, and we have never come across something like this before. So that, I guess, to go back that far, you'd have to ask our lawyers.
Yeah, I think we need to know that before we can.
And how much money would we be abating?
From 2014 forward, the actual usage was $1,666.39.
As much as
$830 from 2014 is debt service, which he is required to pay whether he is actually connected or not.
Right, and is that included in the 16?
I
So that's in
separated it.
addition, okay. And how much is that?
$830.
Okay.
That's because the sewer runs past the
Past his
property.
house.
Right.
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the questions is, who spends the money to prove that it's connected or not? I mean, if you want, typically, we don't spend our money to do something like this, but if it would help you, he did the dye test, but if it would help you, we could spend the money and have do what Jeff suggested, have it cameraed and,
Well, I'm kind of with you on that one in that the property owner is asking for the abatement. The property owner, the burden of proof as to whether they're connected or not connected should fall on the person filing the abatement request.
Because our proof, in other words, our permits and everything else, would sort of lead a reasonable person to assume
Correct.
the connection had been made.
Yeah. Scott has also made a strong recommendation that if he is not connected, that he connect as soon as possible to avoid the now equivalent user charges that are charged for new hookups. So if he has the hookup in place, then he should be connecting the house, or he's gonna have to pay between $2,000 and $5,000 to actually connect his home.
the opportunity for him to do that is now.
Yeah, as I was reading through this, that's one of the things that I thought of, is that, if it turns out that he's not connected, and he wants to be connected, that given the unique situation of this case, we probably could waive some of those connection fees for him to get him connected.
As far as we're concerned, he's connected, so he's just
Yeah.
making a connection.
But I think we do need to definitively find out whether, and the problem is, I mean, we could abate the $1,000 and it's a drop in the bucket compared to the budget, but then what happens going forward? We still don't know.
Right.
And so I think we need to find out, one way or the other, is the property connected or not? If it's not connected, then maybe we have to grant the abatement.
What type of process and how long would it take for us to do that?
To do the investigation?
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a matter of getting the camera guys in, and
They're coming in for something else, aren't they? Or have they already been?
they've already been here to do the last rain event. I don't think it's that expensive.
Where I was going is maybe we could table this until after we've taken some action by checking it ourselves.
I would,
Offer that some of our engineering companies could provide you the service to go above ground and be able to go scan, either the pipe's there or it's not there.
The stub is certainly there.
right, the stub's there.
Stub's there because the stubs, every property is stubbed.
And they had to get a sewer easement in order to even connect. And if you look at the tax maps, the sewer easement
It's
is still
recorded.
there, and it's recorded.
Our camera, we have a pretty good
Ted Berry.
relationship with the camera people, and it's
Ted
not,
Berry.
yeah, it's not that expensive for them to do that work. They're here quite frequently. But the question is, do you want us to do it, or you want him to do that? And you give me some guidance.
Well, I mean, if you look at the facts,
I know,
the facts and the paperwork support the town's position that he's connected.
connected, right. and he should be paying.
But it's sort of like all paperwork. And,
Yeah, there's
you know,
no boots on the ground, so to
Where's
speak.
the boots on the ground? Show me the proof.
I would suggest, I mean, George Hazelton is listed as a contractor, he's still around. Can we get, we think he is anyway.
Yeah, I just saw him.
Yeah.
Let's get in touch with him and say, do you know, what can you tell us about
Yeah,
this
he is
property?
back in town, because I just saw him the other
I mean,
day.
it'd be one more piece of paper, I suppose, but if he's, I mean, maybe he would remember it and say, well, yeah, the guy signed up and then he never did it, or, oh, yeah, I remember doing that one, I remember, you know, whatever.
Be
So,
worthwhile.
I think further investigation is warranted.
So,
Best way to put
If
it.
there's a lift pump on the property that starts and stops, I would offer that it might be
Yeah.
for evidence.
so do you want to table it for,
Yeah, I think we need to
Just-
table it,
just-
but what do we want to accomplish in the interim? Do we want to have
talk to,
talk to Hazelton, and then depending on the outcome of that, and then have it Cameron?
I mean, if it's minimal cost, it might be worthwhile.
Megan, how much does it typically cost us?
I don't know, because we do such long stretches at a time that, I mean, the bills are anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000, but
Oh, okay, it's that
I
much.
don't know how much pipe they're doing either.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Well,
gotta
they
be a
probably-
manhole fairly close, if all he has to do is check one stub, to see whether there's,
Yeah, but
I'll
I
get a-
can't, what I'm saying is I can't give you an estimate.
Right,
as
right,
to
right.
what-
So let's get a quote. So not only do we talk to George, we get a quote
Yep.
for the camera work.
Because
Yep.
I suspect just the setup of the cameras where the, you know, probably doesn't
Yeah.
matter how
Right.
far it's going, it's just getting the truck there. Okay, so is that okay with the board? We got a plan? Talk to George, get a quote for camera, and we'll talk about it next month. Okay,
The engineer in our group may have had struck on the best thing is if there's a pump there, and if it's cycling,
It might be a key.
that
piece
may
of
be the
data.
simplest thing.
yeah, how do you prove that it's cycling?
We
You know,
we
you
can,
put a meg meter on the power line and you get amps,
Yep.
no amps, boom,
Yep.
done.
Okay.
that may be the quickest way.
Alrighty, so I need a motion to exit.
move to exit as wastewater commissioners, return as select board.
Second.
Okay. Alrighty, so. Liaison reports.
Vote on that motion.
Oh, yeah, okay, all in favor? Alright.
Yeah.
Liaison reports. Mark, you wanna go ahead and start?
Parks isn't meeting even though it's on the calendar. It's one of those automatic rollovers. The Conservation Committee met a few days ago, and they're still talking about doing more water testing, and I think should have been in your packets, I gave to Diane some of the findings that Kennedy had found here in the harbor with the different oxygen levels. I didn't see it.
It's not in the packet. I have a copy here.
It's interesting, I mean, just to see what the pH and the oxygen levels are, depending on whether you're at the town dock or out by the last bell buoy, but,
This is all good baseline data.
yeah.
I mean, so now you can look for change over time.
Yeah, he's done that for several years.
Yeah.
Oh,
He has a long record of
He
it.
loves that stuff. And that would be it.
Okay. Ken?
I don't believe any of my groups have met. Linda told me we're gonna have a cemetery committee sometime soon, and so I'll wait for her to call that. Ordinance review, obviously not meeting this time of the year. Legacy, we finished up the Andre project, and I think I reported on this last time that they had raised more money than the repairs were gonna cost, so there'll be a line there that they will keep for ongoing maintenance and things like that.
I do have a question, seeing how the both of you are here. And I did ask Linda the other day, but I'm curious as to what perpetual care is meant to cover.
For Andre?
No, for cemeteries.
Oh, cemetery.
I mean, if a stone has a little bit of a tilt to it,
No.
Mostly it's
Is
taking
that-
care of the grounds,
The
that's,
mowing.
mowing and things like that.
so if a stone falls over, nobody hears it and we go about
Tree
our
falls in the
business.
forest. yeah.
Right.
That'd be really, is that better than I?
If it's a veteran stone, then we are responsible to take care of it.
No,
If it's someone else's, we're really not responsible.
well, that's where I guess I was going. What does
It
the
mostly
perpetual
mowing,
care cover?
mostly covers mowing. Just getting the property mowed.
Okay.
We did have a work session a couple of years ago where we had a group from the Cemetery Association, the old cemeteries, and they came in and reset some stones and cleaned them. And maybe we could get them to come here and do that again.
You know, I hate to see some that have fallen over or are in some form of disrepair. It's just my opinion.
We'd have to start budgeting money to do those repairs.
Or add a little more to your perpetual care fee. That's
Yeah.
just a conversation for, you know.
That money is all held in the investment account, the
Right, and-
cemetery money.
And we're not selling lots at a real fast rate now, so we wouldn't, the people who have paid, they don't pay for perpetual care annually, they pay for it
You
when
pay
they
for
buy
it
the
once
lot.
and
Oh,
it
yeah.
goes into the investment account.
Okay. That it? Okay.
That's it for me, yeah.
Planning Board, John Alexander is no longer the chair there, as you folks know, and Warren Erickson is going to be the new chair. I feel good about the transition that's occurring there. I think, because they are an important board to the town, I think they have things under control. The Investment Committee continues to be a problem, and this is something we as the Select Board are going to have to look at over the coming year, whether we need to, redo that whole board, come up with a different approach to it, because people aren't responding to emails, and it makes it very difficult for Megan. The market's been doing fine, so it's not really a big issue, but right now, the investment committee is pretty non-functional. We'll have to revisit that. Keep Rockport Beautiful meets next week.
And I gotta tell you, if I would have been a little quicker when it came to adjustments of the schedules tonight, I would have had Megan out of here a heck of a lot sooner.
Yeah, I thought of that. too.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah,
we're-
people brought that up, and,
Megan was not terribly concerned.
Yeah, but,
yeah.
sit here for 2 hours to
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
for 10 minutes.
She did contribute on a couple of other items, so, but you're right, we should have thought about that.
Well, we did think about it, and I'll take the responsibility for
Well,
not acting on it.
She said she did not need to go home. She said her son was already in bed asleep, so it didn't matter.
Okay. Any other liaison reports? Jeff?
Harbor Committee is scheduled to meet tomorrow evening pending enough responses from the membership as to whether they're going to attend or not. That is still ongoing, but if the attendance goes up and there's enough to have a quorum, then we'll be meeting in the harbor at 5:15. Pathways Committee is scheduled right by the book here on Wednesdays. And I don't know if this week or next, but it's on my calendar anyway. The other two, I'm still getting caught up on.
I think the
Capital-
pathways, 'cause I still get those emails, I think it is this Wednesday, because usually it's the
That's
first
good.
Wednesday, but the first Wednesday with the fourth.
Yeah, I pulled it off the calendar, so we'll be good.
Good.
Okay, and then Capital Improvement Committee, I'm not sure of, and the comp plan is still pending.
Has Alan gotten back with regards to a meeting on capital improvement?
I haven't approached him yet, but I've got his phone number, and I'll be doing that.
And did, Jeff, did the one member on the harbor committee who hadn't been attending, is that
I
situation
think
been
that was part
resolved?
of,
Yep.
That was-
we voted on that.
We voted Scott
earlier.
Whitcomb in today to take her place.
Okay, so the vacancy was created, that's,
Correct.
I just wanted to make sure of that, okay.
Yeah.
On the Technology Committee, Rick and I met with John Beeman, the chair, to just discuss the fact that, we need to take a hard look at the additional members perhaps on the committee. And anyway, we'll be getting back to the board with respect to
Okay.
some of those administrative matters.
One other thing that I thought about, and Linda, this will be a correction to the minutes regarding the Opera House Committee. I think the minutes that we had say something like that it was decided that the Opera House Committee didn't need a liaison person because there were already 2 employees on it, and I think that's a misstatement. I think for the time being, we're gonna have to assume at some point they're gonna need a liaison person, so I wanna adjust that. But along those same lines, I'm hoping that somebody on the select board will adopt as one of their goals to look at our current sort of committee structure, liaison positions, and minute taking, and see if there's a better way to streamline that. I know this is something we've sort of talked about, and I appreciate everybody doing their best now to be the liaisons and representing these committees, but I think we should look at least how we keep minutes and report back to the board and to the public too. So hopefully someone can take that on as a personal goal. Okay.
Just before you,
Yes.
before you adjourn, I just got a text from Mike with a picture of the fog line truck out painting fog line.
Hope you can see.
Down that way?
Is there any request for an executive session? Hearing none, I'll take a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Not tonight, anyway.
Yeah. Is there a second? All in favor? Unanimous. Okay, thanks, folks.
Thank you.
I appreciate